Hey, what's up everybody? It's Joe here. Before we get this video started, I just want to let you know what's going to be in the background. I'm going to put some video game footage in the background, probably Rocket League. And I'm going to edit on top of it so you guys can see what I'm talking about as I talk about it. But feel free to just, listen to this video as a podcast if you want to, or watch the gameplay if you want. Not great gameplay, but whatever. Just wanted to let you guys know that. Enjoy the video. Peace. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Joe here. Welcome back to another video. It's my first video in a while, but today I wanted to go over the 2020 MLB season. This is for sure going to be an exciting season. 60 games, a sprint to the finish line. I want to go over my predictions for all 30 teams, where they're going to place in their division, and who is eventually going to make the playoffs. This is going to be a long one, but let's get started. We're going to start off with the AL East, go through the AL first, then we'll go to the NL. I think we're going to be in for an interesting year. So first I want to go over a few things that I think are just going to be general trends in baseball this year. First off, I think this year specifically, offense is way more important than pitching. I think that it's going to take a little while for pitchers to adjust, like always, and be able to kind of extend deeper into games. But with the kind of only 60-game season, pitchers aren't going to be playing as much as they normally are. They're only going to be going maybe 6 innings in the beginning of the year, and it probably is going to take half the season before they can be stretched out and ready to go all the way. So in that way, I don't think it matters much how good your rotation is as it normally does. Meanwhile, I think hitting is something that's much easier to get into form, get into the swing of things, and I think that powerful lineups will end up having an edge over really good rotations this season, and you'll kind of see that in my predictions. Secondly, I think that what division you're in is incredibly important. I don't want to spoil anything for my predictions later on, but for example, let's just take the AL Central. That's a pretty weak division, and the NL Central kind of has the benefit of being able to play games against them this season. Meanwhile, you have like team in the NL East, they're playing the AL East, and that really kind of puts the NL teams at a disadvantage, the NL East teams at a disadvantage, because they're not getting those games against easy teams. And when you're not playing every division in your own league, I think that ends up causing a lot of problems. And I think that it's going to make kind of some teams that you don't think of being in the playoffs, I think is going to end up making them in the playoffs. I don't know, maybe I didn't make sense. But let's get right into it. With the AL East, I think the 5th place team, no surprise here, it's the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, they suck. Like, let's just be honest here. They have some decent young players, right? Like, John Means is a decent pitcher, but pitching doesn't mean that much. Hitting, I mean, somehow Chris Davis is still in the middle of this lineup, which doesn't make any sense to me. You gotta go through their projected lineup, which I'll have on the screen for every team. You have Anthony Santander as their 3-hole hitter, which just kind of doesn't, I mean, it's all they have. It's all they have. The Orioles aren't trying to win. I don't need to talk about them that long. They're not good. 5th place in the AL East. I honestly don't even know if they're going to get 15 wins this season against the loaded NL East, and the rest of the AL East is also like a super talented division. So let's go into 4th place with AL East. I think that's going to be the Toronto Blue Jays. They obviously have some really powerful, great young stars. Obviously, Vlad Jr. is a phenom. Bo Bichette, that's another phenom. But I think they're probably a year away from truly being competitive, and I think that there's just teams that are better than them. To be honest with you, I think that, picking up Ryu from the Dodgers is a huge addition to their pitching staff, but is it enough to get them playoffs? I don't think so this year. But I do think that later down the line, I think that this Blue Jays team is truly set up to become a powerhouse. It honestly wouldn't surprise me to see them make a lot of damage this year, because they have the power to do it. I just think they're a year away. I think that, this will be an interesting experience for everybody, and I don't know how well such a young team is going to be able to handle all of the challenges that come with this season. But they're good. They're talented. Absolutely. 3rd place, I got the Boston Red Sox. I think that their pitching staff is bad, but I don't think it matters that much this year, honestly. Like, they still have such a incredibly talented lineup. Benintendi, Devers, Bogarts, JD Martinez is going to mash like always. Alex Verdugo, they picked them up from the Dodgers and everything. Like, this is a good lineup. Mitch Morgan, it goes on and on. And I think that this is a team that's just going to be able to slug their way into 3rd place in the division. I think that they're a more mature team, while the Blue Jays aren't as mature. They've got some younger players. But the Red Sox, these guys have experience winning. They know what it takes to win. And I think that's going to give them an upper edge this season. 4th place, I got the Rays, or second place I got the Rays. I honestly think that I almost put them ahead in first place. Obviously, we know that the first place is going to be the Yankees now. But I ended up deciding not to do that because of just my general sentiment about this season. I think that the Rays have maybe one of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball, and they're obviously like incredible for the amount of money that is put into the team. I think it's phenomenal what they've been able to build. But I don't see them being able to kind of be out slugging the Yankees. I just don't really think that's possible. Or not even just out slugging. I just think that the Rays are such a hard team to predict what's going to happen. I think that eventually they're going to kind of fall back downhill again. Obviously, they lost their general manager to the Red Sox, but they're a good team. They're managed incredibly well. It's incredibly interesting, all the stuff they do. I love the opener. I know they've been experimenting with, a two-man outfield, which I love that idea. I honestly, that is, whenever I was younger and I wanted to just kind of like revolutionize baseball, I always thought it would be so interesting to have two outfielders and kind of have like the third outfielder just be like in shallow center field. But regardless, that's kind of what they've been kind of messing around with in summer camp. And I think it's interesting. I think that the Rays are just such a smart team. They're such a smart baseball team. And I think that they're kind of going to extract every little bit of talent they have, just like they've always done. And I think that's going to be able to propel them to second place in the division. And of course, their pitching is still so phenomenal. And even though pitching doesn't mean as much, like their rotation's phenomenal. Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, like that's a solid 1-2-3 punch right there. And even like the rest of them, like Trevor Richards, Ryan Yarbrough, that's not bad either. They're a good team, and I think that they might even be able to be first in the division. But ultimately, it's hard not to pick the New York Yankees. They've done it before. They're probably going to do it again. They look to be healthy. That was the main thing I think that really set the Yankees back these last 2 years is constant injuries. You constantly saw Judge get hurt. Stanton got hurt. I think there was a point last year where like almost 8 people in their starting opening day lineup was hurt. That can't happen again, can it? Right? Like, there's no way that happens again. That was so unlucky. I think this Yankees team is one of baseball's best, and the addition of Garrett Cole just kind of pushes them up even farther. And James Paxton's so underrated. He's one of the most underrated pitchers in baseball, in my opinion. And I really think the Yankees are one of the biggest threats to possibly win a World Series this year. With that, let's move on to the AL Central, which honestly I think it's the worst division in baseball. I think this division's kind of trash. I don't think they're very good. But anyways, the team that I think is going to be in last place in the AL Central is the Tigers. You look at this lineup, and you don't really see anything, honestly. CJ Cron, he's a good power hitter, but that's all he is. Miguel Cabrera is kind of a shell of what he used to be. Cameron Maybin's old. Like, this team is just kind of old and not very good anymore. I don't think there's any chance that the Tigers really accomplish anything. I honestly think they're probably the worst team in baseball. They're bad. Let's move on to the next one, and that's the Kansas City Royals. This is another team that's pretty bad, but I think they have some talent. I think they have talent that kind of propels them ahead of Detroit, right? Whit Merrifield is a really consistent, good player. He always does the smart thing, and I think that he's exactly what they need to be a little bit better. Salvador Perez is an incredible catcher. Alex Gordon's pretty good. Jorge Soler obviously is a great young talent, and I think that the Royals are a team that are on the way up. I think that they're not there yet, obviously, but I think they're a little bit underrated, actually. I think they're better than people think. Next, I got the Indians. I don't know, this might be a controversial one. A lot of people really like the Indians, but I don't. I just don't like them. I think that Francisco Lindor is obviously a generational talent, but they don't really want him anymore. They want to get rid of him, and I don't really know what kind of, thing can go into his mind, and what incentive does he have to play well? What incentive does he have to really give it his all when he knows that he's not going to be with the Indians for much longer? I don't think there's much there. They got Franmil Reyes, who I think is one of the best power hitters in baseball. He's just so imposing when you look at him in the box. He's got incredible power. Carlos Santana is always a good player for them, walks a ton. But yeah, like, I just don't see it with the Indians. Cesar Hernandez, their second baseman now, like, that helps them for sure. Like, they're not a bad team, but to me, I don't see how all of these parts come together and are greater than the sum of their parts. Like the Rays, one of the things that's so phenomenal about them is that the sum is greater than all of their parts. And I think the sum of the Indians is less than all of their parts. I don't see how this lineup really works, to be honest with you. I see it's just a weird mix. It's a weird mix. Just my vibe is that the Indians aren't going to be that good. Obviously, like their pitching is very good, even with Shane Bieber, Mike Clevenger. That's phenomenal. Carlos Carrasco is also really good, but I just think that they're really overrated, and I think that the next two teams are in a better position for them to win this year. And that's where we go to the next one, the White Sox. Maybe also controversial. A lot of people don't like the White Sox, but I think that they're pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Tim Anderson is so underrated. People always talk about him as being a guy that brings fun back into baseball. But what people forget is that he's also such a good player. You look through this lineup and there's not many holes. Yohan Moncada is so good. Jose Abreu brings a ton of power to the first base position. Yasmani Grandal, such a great offensively minded catcher, and I think that offense is the most important thing this year. Edwin Encarnacion, obviously another super powerful player. Eloy, Nomar Mazar, Luis Robert. Like Luis Robert's predicted to hit 8th for them. And he is one of the best young players you've seen, maybe since Mike Trout. Like, the White Sox are really underrated. It wouldn't surprise me to see them make the playoffs. We'll find out more, obviously, what I think later on when we get to the projections I have for who gets the wild card. But I think they're getting second place in the AL Central, and I think it might honestly be a little bit easy for them to get to that point. But first place, we're going to go with the Twins. They were so good last year. They came out of nowhere, but look at the lineup. It's a really good lineup once again. And they picked up Josh Donaldson, which is making them even better. And I think Donaldson's going to be really a piece that kind of propels them way ahead of anybody else in the division. And I think that they're going to really shock some people once again this year. People really haven't been talking about the Twins. They've been talking about the more flashy teams, the Dodgers, the Yankees, all of those kind of teams. But I think the Twins are honestly so geared up. I think that they're playing weak teams, right? Like the AL Central is not good. The NL Central is better, but I also don't think it's that great. And I think that the Twins really have the ability to maybe end up with the highest win total in baseball this year. In part of that schedule, but also in part just because of how good they are. And the pitching's not bad either. Jose Barrios, Kenta Maeda, Jake Odorizzi. It's a pretty good 1-2-3 punch. Not great, but it's pretty good. And I think that the Twins are really someone to watch out for because I think that they probably honestly will be the team with the most wins in baseball. I could see them getting 40 wins, which is a lot this season. And with that, let's go to the AL West. Up first, 5th place, the Mariners. I don't think it's a surprise here. They're just not good. They're not good. I've heard some good things. I've heard J.P. Crawford has been really good for them in camp, which is great. I mean, he was really kind of just thrown into the trade with, I think that was the Segura trade. But, yeah, like, he's been good. But other than that, they just don't really have anything, if I'm going to be honest with you. Kyle Seager is, he's there, but this team doesn't really have anything going for them. Even you look at their pitching staff, and there's no one that you really want to throw out there every 5th day, and you're confident that they can get you a win. The Mariners just aren't. They don't have it. They don't have it. That brings us to 4th place, which is the Texas Rangers. When I think of an average team, I think of the Texas Rangers. They're not bad. They're not bad at all. But they're also not good. They obviously got Joey Gallo, probably the best power threat in all of baseball. Shin-Soo Choo is so underrated. He's always been underrated for the last 10 years, but he puts up stats every single year, just like he will this year. Elvis Andrus is a great shortstop defensively, and he also is pretty good offense. Rougned Odor, like, this is a good team. Pitching's not bad either with Lance Lynn, Mike Minor, Court Kluber. Like, this is an underrated pitching staff. But I honestly think the AL West is kind of good this year. So I don't see them finishing above 4th place, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see the Rangers kind of beat this perception I have of them and to end up maybe, with the wild card spot or maybe even win the division. That wouldn't totally surprise me, if I'm going to be honest with you. 3rd place, we got the LA Angels. I think the LA Angels have one of the worst pitching staffs in all of baseball. This is just a bad pitching staff, right? You see it on the screen now. Andrew Heaney, he's not what you're looking for every 5th day, and that's their ace. Dylan Bundy, he was a great prospect, but it hasn't panned out at all. Maybe this will be the year things finally turned around for him, but I don't know about that. And then this lineup is kind of just, interesting. I think Rendon helps this lineup a lot, and that's why I put them ahead of the Rangers, actually. It's just because they got Rendon. And obviously they still have Mike Trout. They have the ghost of Albert Pujols, Justin Upton. Like, this is a good lineup. Alderson Simmons, best defensive player in the game, probably. But I just don't think the Angels have what it takes to compete against the A's and the Astros. Their lineup is there, and I know that that's the most important thing for me this year. But their pitching is just so bad. I don't think I can really overlook that with them. I'm not totally sure on what the plan for Ohtani to pitches this year. I heard it's kind of similar to the idea they had last year as well. But I think Ohtani's kind of overrated. I'm not going to lie. He's a good player, don't get me wrong, but he's not a phenom. He's not going to really, I think, put them ahead of some of the other teams in this division. And with that, let's get into the second place team in the AL West, which I think is going to be the Houston Astros. The Astros are good. They cheated a lot, and I am very much against that. I think that they even cheated last year. I think that evidence is there. I think they should have been punished more, but the Astros are a good team. You take that out, and they've still got a lot of good pieces. George Springer, Jose Altuve, Bregman, Reddick, Correa, Cal Tucker. Like, this is a good offense, a very good offense. And their pitching's also good. I mean, Verlander, Greinke, we gotta forget they have Greinke, but they still have Greinke. I think that this is a team that is really good, but I just don't know what their mental state's going to be. I think that they know that kind of everybody hates them and everybody should hate them, and I think that that kind of is going to eat them up. I don't think it's going to be as bad as that would be if fans were at games this year, and man, like, we're getting robbed not being able to see the Astros get booed, but I have full confidence that it's still going to happen whenever we get back into stadiums, whether that be next year, hopefully next year, or whenever. But I think that the Astros, ultimately, I don't know if these guys have the mental fortitude, honestly, to be able to handle all of the... you saw them get hit twice the other day. I think it was Altuve and Bregman, like, back-to-back. Who knows if it was intentional, but 100% chance they're going to intentionally get thrown at this year. I don't think they can handle it. I just don't think so. And I think the A's, who I think is going to be first place in the AL West, I think they're so underrated. Like, this team is good. Matt Chapman, probably the most underrated player in baseball. He's been consistently putting up good numbers year after year. Such a power-hitting third baseman that has good defense, too. Marcus Semien, Matt Olson. This team has pop. Chris Davis, we forget about him, Mr. 247. I think that they really have a lot of talent in that lineup, and I think that they're another team that kind of gels together really well, and that the sum is greater than the parts, just like the Rays. This lineup's, the pitching rotation is also pretty good. Not that it's as good as the Astros, but I think it's still pretty good. I think it's underrated. I think AJ Puk's one of the top rookies, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year, because I think that they really have the ability to surprise some people, and I'm going to put it out there. I would be kind of surprised if the A's didn't win this division. I think that second place is more up to the open between the Rangers, the Angels, and the Astros. But I think the A's kind of have first place not locked up, but I think they really, really are underrated by the vast majority of people. And with that, let's get to the NL East. This is the hardest one for me. I'm a Phillies fan, so obviously trying to be unbiased here. I'm trying to kind of look at this as objectively as possible. Fifth place, though, not hard. It's the Marlins. The Marlins' schedule this year is absolutely ridiculous. The AL East, I think every team in the AL East, maybe the Orioles aren't as good as the Marlins, but the Marlins don't get a break this entire schedule, and they're going to struggle really, really bad. They have some good players, though. They're kind of on the way up, but they're in just such a good division that it doesn't really matter. Picking up Corey Dickerson is good. Corey Dickerson's an underrated player, but they don't have a shot. Like, let's be honest here. The Marlins aren't going anywhere. I just hope they decide to really build a team up instead of just the perpetual rebuild of trading away their good players. Like, imagine if they still had Stanton and all of those guys, which unrealistic, sure, but they've had good players for so long. Hopefully they don't trade them away this time. Fourth place, probably the most controversial thing I have on this entire list. I think it's the Nationals. I'm not going to lie. I think that this is a team that's really based on their pitching, but I don't think pitching is going to be as important this year. And I also kind of think their pitching's overrated. Scherzer's obviously phenomenal, but we're due for him to kind of take a step back. He's getting up there in age. We saw the Phillies put up 6 runs on him in one of the summer camp games the other day. Strasburg has always had injury problems. I think Corbin's really underrated, but it's still a good pitching rotation. But I don't think their lineup has what it takes to really take a step forward and cover for Rendon being gone. I think Juan Soto is going to take a step back this year. I think that with more film on him, I think people are going to be able to adjust better. Howie Kendrick was phenomenal in the playoffs, but he's not an all-star. He's not some great player. Obviously, like, Trey Turner's good, great leadoff hitter. Adam Eaton's good, but like, I think the Nationals are kind of overrated. People forget that they were a wild card team last year. They were a wild card team that barely made it in that second wild card spot, right? Like, this isn't they aren't world beaters. They aren't world beaters. I think that they were an above average team last year, although not very above average, even though they won the World Series. They just went on a run at the right time in October, and that's all it takes to win the World Series. And I respect them for that. They deserve to win the World Series, but I don't see them being able to reproduce it this year. There's always a World Series hangover too. Let's be real. They're probably, I just don't see it with the Nationals. Third place in the NL East, I got the Mets. The Mets, they're a good team, right? But they're another team that's kind of based on their pitching rotation. DeGrom, Stroman, Syndergaard, who's not even playing this year. Like, I think Syndergaard not playing honestly might be the difference between them finishing in third and in second place in the division. And this is a team that has some good players on offense. Wilson Ramos, I think one of the better catchers in baseball. Brandon Nimmo, super underrated player. Pete Alonso obviously mashes. I'm excited to see him again. Jeff McNeil's a good player. Robinson Cano, I don't know why. They announced that he's in the 3-hole again. It doesn't make any sense. He's not as good as he was 10 years ago, right? Like, come on. Come on, Mets. But I just don't think, right, the second place team, not to spoil, I think they're a team that has a better lineup than the Mets, but not as good of a pitching staff. And this is what I mean when I say that I think lineups are more important than pitching staffs. I think that the second place team, the Philadelphia Phillies, are going to be ahead of the Mets this season because of that lineup, right? Like, I don't really see many holes. I might be biased, I don't know, but this is a good lineup, especially because so many pieces in that lineup underperformed last year. But with the new manager and Joe Girardi, I think that they'll be able to take the step forward back to what they usually perform at. I think we're in for a great year from Bryce Harper. I think he's heard a lot of criticism, and I think he's the kind of player that's really going to fight back on that and remind people why he's one of the best players in baseball. But even outside of that, Andrew McCutcheon's going to be back from his injury. Will it be as good? Time will tell. But even if he's not, he's still such a great clubhouse presence. And you got the addition of Didi Gregorius, who I think is a super underrated player. Rhys Hoskins, I think, is super overrated. As a Phillies fan, I don't think Rhys Hoskins is our future. I think he's had a great call-up on, it feels like forever ago, but I think that was, 2017? Yeah, it was 2017. But I just don't think he's that good. I don't think he's that good. I think that we need to kind of get rid of him. But this team's talented. The projected lineup I have open right now, it says Adam Hazley is going to be their third outfielder, but I think it should be Roman Quinn. But regardless, I don't think that tips the scales in either direction. I think the Phillies are a good team with a really good lineup, an underrated lineup. That their pitching kind of sucks. Wheeler helps, but I don't really want to see the Vince Velasquez, Nick Pivetta. I don't need to see this again. Jake Arrieta, he's been so bad. Please, at least this is the last year. Thank Christ. But first place in the NL East, I think that it's going to be the Braves. I think the Braves are really a step ahead of everybody else in this division. I think that they're one of the best teams in baseball. When you look at it, the lineup, Mike Soroka, Max Fried, this is a good team. Cole Hamels is hurt right now, but would even make the rotation? I don't think it's a guarantee. Like, they also got Fulton Nowich. Like, this is a good team. Acuna, Albies, Freeman, Ozuna. Like, this is a really good lineup. Austin Riley, underrated young player compared to all the stars who we hear about all the time. We don't hear as much about Austin Riley, but he's really talented. Dansby Swanson, such a great defensive player. Always like his at-bats too. Dansby Swanson really makes you work. I think that the Braves are a really good team. I think that they're going to have a fire lit under them after losing in the division series last year, embarrassingly to the Cardinals, I might add. yeah, I think the Braves are the first place team in this division by far. Now the NL Central, which honestly I think is kind of the hardest division to predict. I think that all 5 of these teams aren't that far apart. They're really not that far apart. At least, 4 through 1 aren't. 5th place, the Pirates, I think they're a half step behind everybody else. I think Josh Bell is a phenomenal first baseman. I think Colin Moran's a phenomenal young player. But they just don't have the firepower. There's, Starling Marte was a really good player for them for a long time, and I think they're going to miss him, to be honest with you. Even though they have good young players, Kevin Newman. But I just don't see it with the Pirates. I just don't see it. Sorry. 4th place, got the Reds. I think that the Reds are an interesting team. I think they have a really good top 3 in their rotation with Sonny Gray, Luis Castillo, and Trevor Bauer. But I just don't know what to expect out of this lineup. Joey Votto isn't the player he used to be, even though he still hits really well. For contact, he gets a lot of walks. He's such a great guy, so funny, but he's not as good as he used to be. Eugenio Suarez obviously is a phenomenal player. Moustakas is a good second baseman. But this team just doesn't really jump off the sheet to me in any way. They haven't really been good in a while, and I don't think they're going to be as good this year. I wouldn't be totally surprised. I mean, maybe I'm totally wrong about what I think about pitching versus hitting this year, and this rotation's kind of lift them up, but I don't see it happening. 3rd place in the division, the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they're old, man. They're an old team. It's kind of hard to believe they still got, not the core, but they've still got Yadier Molina being the catcher for seemingly the last infinity years. He's been there as the catcher, and Adam Wainwright still in the rotation. I think the Cardinals are a team that's always good. They've never been bad for as long as I can remember. They've been bad, but they've been a competitive team, and I think they'll be competitive again this year. But ultimately, I don't think that in this short season, I don't think they have really the star power that they need to really push them over the top and get them into the playoffs. I don't know, maybe Goldschmidt will return to form. I feel like he was kind of quiet last year. He's a good player, really underrated player again. So I could see it happening. But I just don't think it is going to happen. And 2nd place in the NL Central, we got the Cubs. Cubs are really an underrated team. So many things I'm saying are underrated, but it's true with the Cubs. People forget they have Chris Bryant, Anthony Rizzo, Javi Baez. Kyle Schwarber absolutely mashes, even though he doesn't do much else. He mashes, and with a DH, you better believe that Schwarber not having to play the field helps the Cubs. This rotation is pretty good too. Yu Darvish, Tyler Chatwood, Kyle Hendricks, John Lester is still in this rotation. He's not as good as he used to be with the Red Sox, but he's still a good player, and I think he's the kind of veteran presence that helps. This is a veteran team, a team full of good players, veteran players. Obviously, there's some young talent there, but it's not brand new young talent, and I think that this is a team that's really built to compete this year, and I could easily see them win the division, but at the end of the day, I gave the edge to the Brewers because of what we've seen from them in the past. Christian Yelich, Yelly, one of the best players in baseball, absolutely. Keston Hiura, one of the best young players in baseball. I think that this team doesn't really have many lows. I think this is a team that top to bottom, every single player in that lineup, every single pitcher in that rotation, they can compete. They can bring it any day that they step onto the field. And I think that's really going to set them apart, because you're never getting a day off when you're playing the Brewers. You're never facing some scrub number 5 pitcher. You're never getting a bad lineup. They have players to put in every single position that can contribute in a meaningful way. And I think that in a season like this, that depth, that just really it's a unique depth that they have, I think that it really kind of lifts them over the top, and I think it's going to be able to give them this division. I think they're going to win the NL Central. With that, let's head into the NL West, which is another really interesting division, actually. Last place, though, I have the San Francisco Giants. I don't think the Giants are bad, but they're just old. They're just old. I just don't see it. The NL West, I think, is another division that some people don't really give the respect that it needs, but I don't see it with the Giants. They got Hunter Pence, good player. Alex Dickerson, Brandon Crawford. Like, Brandon Crawford's obviously a phenomenal defensive player. Brandon Belt, I don't think he's that great anymore. Longoria is still a good player, but he's old. Like, I just don't see it with the Giants rotation. It's fine. It's fine. They're not that good, though. I don't think this is a shock to anybody. Fourth place, I got the Diamondbacks. This is a team that is interesting. I think that the addition of Madison Bumgarner is one of the more interesting offseason moves that, honestly, I kind of forgot about, and I'm sure that a lot of you guys did as well. But this is a decent lineup. Nick Ahmed's a good player. David Peralta, Eduardo Escobar, Ketel Marte. They got Starling Marte, who I was just talking about with the Pirates. I think that they've got the pieces to really kind of surprise some people, but I don't think it's gone together. I think this is a team that they kind of made a lot of changes this offseason, and I think that, this is a hard year to gel, right? Because you're not able to do a lot of the things with your teams that you would normally be able to do, and I think that they're going to have a hard time gelling, and I think that it's going to end up hurting them in the end. But 2021, I could see them really competing, to get into the playoffs. Third place, got the Rockies. Perhaps the best 3-4 in all of baseball is Trevor Story, Nolan Arenado. Obviously, got Charlie Blackmon too. But I think that is one of the better lineups in baseball. Such good star power at the top. Pitching, not great. It's never been great. The Coors effect, whatever you want to call it. But I don't think it really matters that much this season. I think that they've always been a team that's been able to kind of compete with their hitting, even back in the Tulowitzki, Cargo years, and I think that they'll be able to do it again this year, and I have them in third place in the division. I think they're pretty close to the Diamondbacks, honestly, but at the end of the day, I think Story and Arenado and kind of Charlie Blackmon too, they kind of have it so that I think that they're going to come in third place ahead of the Diamondbacks. Second place, I got the Padres. I don't know. I think this is a good team. This is a really good team. When I was kind of doing my research for this and I was looking through their team, their roster, I was surprised by everybody that they have. Obviously, we know of, Tatis Jr. gets so much attention. Machado, one of the best players in baseball, offensively and defensively. But even outside of that, this is a good team. They got Tommy Pham, who was a great addition to them. They got Eric Hosmer, Will Myers, Jurickson Profar. Wow, I didn't even know about that. But they're a good team, and I think that they also have the pitching that is going to be enough. I don't think it's phenomenal pitching, but I think Chris Paddock's a great pitcher. I think that he's someone that you can really count on every fifth day. Garrett Richard, obviously, is another good pitcher. And I think that the Padres are a team that could really compete this season. For a wild card, not the division, I think that more than anybody else in baseball, I am 100% confident that the Dodgers are winning the NL West. Holy Christ, this team is good. Obviously, Mookie Betts just signed, 13 years, $380 million, which is a steal, by the way, for a player as good as Mookie Betts. But outside of that, holy Christ, this team is absurd. They got Cody Bellinger, Max Muncy, Justin Turner, Jock Peterson. This lineup is good top to bottom, and their pitching is just as good with Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Ross Stripling. Oh my God, this team is honestly one of the best teams in baseball. I might put it out there right now. I will put it out there right now. They're the best team in baseball. The Dodgers are the best team in baseball, and I think it's going to stay that way for a few more years, to tell you the truth. And so you got my division teams, all the teams that I think are going to win the division. Obviously, I think the Yankees are going to win the AL East. The Twins are going to win the AL Central. The A's are going to win the AL West. The Braves are going to win the NL East. The Brewers are going to win the NL Central. And the Dodgers are going to win the NL West. But let's get into my wild card teams a little bit. I think that the first wild card, they'll get the home wild card game in the National League. I think it's going to be the Phillies. Call it a little bit of bias if you want, but I think that this lineup of the Phillies really is underrated. And I think that they're all kind of due to have a better year. Everybody in this team was bad last year, performed below expectations, except for maybe a couple like JT Realmuto. But I think this Phillies team is underrated, and I think that they're going to really do some damage this year with that star power that they have. After that, I got the Cubs. This is a team that I think is going to take advantage of playing a weak AL Central. I think that the Padres are probably a better team than the Cubs, if I'm going to be honest with you. But I think that it's tougher to play the AL West than the AL Central, and I don't really think it's that close. So at the end of the day, I had the Cubs taking this over the Padres, but Padres could end up winning the wild card, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I think it'll be the Cubs. In the AL, I got the Rays coming in the first wild card. I think that the Rays are such a great team, like I talked about earlier. The creativity that they show every single game, and kind of just they're a smart baseball team. I said it before, I'll say it again, but I think that the Rays are a team that really adds up all their players, and they get every last drop they can out of them. It's the way it's always been. I mean, they won the AL in 2008 because of that, and I think that they could do it again. I think that they could honestly be a real threat, just like the Nationals were last year, to get a wild card spot and to win the World Series. You saw them almost beat the Astros last season in the divisional series. And speaking of the Astros, I think the Astros get the second wild card. For how much trash I talked about them earlier, this is still a good team, still a good lineup, still a good rotation, and I don't see a way that the Astros don't make the playoffs. It sucks, I know. Sorry, Astros fans, but they're good. They're really good. A lot of great players, even though they're not the most likable and all that stuff. But yeah, I think that's going to end up this video. But let me know how you liked it. Something new I'm trying out. It's kind of long, I know. Almost 36 minutes right now. But yeah, figured I'd try it out, see how I kind of like this. Maybe I'll do one of these every single week, kind of like a power rankings every week. I definitely plan to make some videos. I just finished up some summer classes, and I got a lot of free time now. And yeah, might as well make some videos. Maybe I'll make some new video game videos. I don't know. We'll see. Whatever I feel like. Whatever. If there's anything you guys want, comment down below. I got some ideas in my head, my notes on my phone, but at the end of the day, I'll upload whatever you guys want. I don't really care. But yeah, thanks for watching this. This was fun for me, Nick. Hopefully this was fun for you guys to watch. This is Joe signing out. Peace. Have a good one.